what about you? How'd you get into the field?
I grew up with, my parents just being like, "You're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna go to medical school," and I was like, "Yeah, no, I don't think so." And I just wasn't super into it because I didn't really, see how we could disconnect the body, mind, spirit, and so all of undergrad, I was trying to, like, put those 3 together. My professors were like, "You're a hippie, you're a weirdo, maybe you should go to California." And, um, the last month before graduation, I got a pamphlet that was about naturopathic medicine, and the cover said "Body, Mind, Spirit." I opened it up, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is, like, all the stuff I wanna be learning." So, I was like, "Maybe I will be a doctor, just a naturopathic doctor." And my parents were like, "Oh my god, no, just go be a real doctor." And I was like, "No, I'm doing this. I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm doing this." So I pretty much, like, made my decision in 5 seconds and haven't looked back, and that was 19 years ago. Or that's when I graduated, it was 19 years ago.
That's awesome though. I feel looking back, I when I first went to college, I originally was looking into the medical field, and I don't think I would have. Maybe I would have enjoyed being in the medical field. I don't know, but I was going more a traditional route. I was looking like respiratory therapy and things like that. But if I had the know-how or knew what I knew now, then I would probably have tried to pursue a route like yours. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good field. It's a surprisingly small field, but it's good.
As well, you focus more on like fertility, right? So what took you down that path specifically?
Oh, that's a great question. So, I was about 4 to 5 years out of school. I had been on practicing already, and my partner at the time that I was married to said wanted to start trying for a baby, and literally every time he mentioned babies, my uterus was like, "No!" And I was like, "Oh, crap, like, what's happening?" And, like, I had signs before then, like, my cycles were out of whack. There was lots of things that, looking back, I was like, "Oh, duh, like, come on, you should know better. You're a naturopathic doctor." But I wasn't paying attention, like, I was just on the, like, we met, we fell in love, we got married, we did all the things, and then it wasn't until the baby conversation that I was like, "Crap, I don't actually see myself having children with this man." And that led me down a whole rabbit hole because I was in my early 30s. It's been said that fertility declines or drops off of a cliff at 35. So I was like, well, if I'm not gonna have children with him, then am I okay not having children? Because that might be the reality. And what I came to was I do want to have the option to have children, but I'm very clear that it's not with him. So then I got a divorce and had gone down the fertility rabbit hole, like, what can I do to support my own fertility? How do I do this? How do I, like, be okay till I'm ready and have the right partner? And who knows when that will be. So there was this, like, just I'm sure there's something we can do, but I didn't know what it was at the time because that's not how I had learned fertility anything in medical school. So I was just, like, learning for myself, and, before I knew it, I was, like, talking about what I was learning, and a lot of that started with realizing that this idea of the fertility cliff is not actually based in any science. So, the data, there is not very many data or studies on this, but what I traced it back to was there is a records of women in the 1800s in France not having children after 35. So, and the records are through churches that were documenting that women weren't coming to get their children baptized after 35. So, me being who I am, I was like, well, what was life expectancy for women in the 1800s? I mean, doesn't sound like a lot. And sure enough, it's like 32.8 years or something like that. So, I was like, well, they're not bringing their children in because they're literally not here on the planet anymore. Um So as I started sharing that with people, women were like, "Oh my god, you can help me with my fertility." And I was like, "No, this is just like research that I'm doing for myself. I'm just sharing it with you guys." They're like, "Great, you can help us." And before I knew it, it was like floods of people that were like, help me get pregnant." And I was like, "Oh my god, I didn't know this was a thing. Like people need help getting pregnant? What?" And now, of course, it sounds ludicrous, but back when I was starting in this field, it wasn't that common, and people were definitely not as vocal about it now as they are now, right? So it was a good learning experience for me. And after the first few couples that I got to help, I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing. Let's just keep doing this." And I figured at some point I would get bored or sick of it, but I haven't yet. So, here I am still doing fertility 15 years later.
That's so cool. What a good story, and it's so funny too how life just leads you into it sometimes, and it's just like you just almost have to like open your eyes and be like, oh, that okay, it's like right in front of you. But it's funny to hear the well, not really funny, but I mean, coincidence or ridiculous that we are still like using this record from France in the 1800s, right? But I know that especially like with pregnant women, they're one of the like least studied groups of society, and with reason because obviously it's such a a time in one's life that you're very vulnerable and you need to be like very taken care of, right? But it's really wild how we lack a lot of information around that time of life, and especially like now as I feel like the narrative is that fertility rates are like dropping, but yeah, and then as well as like when you're 18 you're like, oh my god, like don't get pregnant, right? Like 20, 21, like all you're like, oh, gotta like you're constantly being told like, do not get anyone pregnant or do not get pregnant, blah blah blah, and then you get to the point where you're actually trying and you're like, oh wait, this is like way harder than you actually think it is.
Yeah, yeah, that too. It's crazy, like, the messages that we're told when we're younger and how little we actually know about what makes people get pregnant, right? Like, that is not something that people are taught, especially women, but I definitely like, when I realized, like, oh, there's, like, a 24-hour window where there's actually an egg present to get pregnant, I was like, "Wait, what? 24 hours in a whole month is what my fertility window looks like?" And it's, like, actually a week based on, like, how good the sperm are and all of that, but it is such a small window of time that we spend so much time, like, worrying about and trying to prevent that we don't ever think, like, what when I get am ready, do I need to do to make it happen? And a lot of couples are, like, taken for a loop because they're like, "Wait, I didn't expect this to be so challenging," right? And especially now, like, I feel like the fertility rate's declining so quickly. There are younger and younger and younger couples that are like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that," like, I'm 25. I didn't expect to have fertility issues at 25, 30. So definitely the age group is getting younger and younger, and a lot of that, like, a lot of the fertility decline is in men, documented in men. Um, so that's also a big wake-up call for a lot of couples, not realizing, "Oh, wait, it's both of us, it's not just the woman." So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and thank you for highlighting that because I think it's becoming more known, but for the longest time it was always like, yeah, well, fertility's on the woman kind of deal. Whereas it's like, and maybe a small percentage for the man, but yeah, I mean, like it does take two to tango. Like it definitely would make sense to like fall equal parts. But what are some of the things that you've seen, or maybe like the number one thing that has been a major cause in infertility for, I guess, both men and women?
Yeah, I think for I think for both sides, so much of it has to do with the toxins in our environment, and so many of those toxins are, to an extent, unavoidable. There's a lot of research about reproductive toxins and carcinogenic toxins, and it's not surprising that it's the same. Like, the toxins that are causing cancer are also the same ones that are causing reproductive issues. And, the biggest ones, in men specifically, it's like the plastics, the phthalates, which is basically all the fragrances, uh, and, those are the 2 big ones in men, and we don't realize, like, how prevalent it is. So, especially, like, when I'm talking to men, I'm like, "Well, did we think about the car air freshener that you hang in the car that you're literally, like, breathing in for the amount of time that you're in your car?" And I know, like, I don't know, I always say this to my husband. I'm like, "What is your obsession with the car? I don't understand." Uh, so like, you know, gu guys like their car to be a specific way, and unfortunately, like, all of the crap that you are doing to clean the car and then make it smell good are all the things that are killing your sperm, essentially. So, for the men, it's those are the big ones, and then plastic, of course, which is so prevalent, and it's literally in everything everywhere. So those are the 2 big ones, and then for women, we can add in an additional one, which is glyphosate, that is, essentially Roundup that is sprayed on food usually, but the biggest plant is actually cotton. Cotton is getting sprayed with glyphosate, which then turns into period products, and those products are just killing the good microbes that are in our reproductive system. So, those 3, I would say, on the female side are the big ones.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point to make about glyphosate, and for a second, I was like, "Well, wouldn't glyphosate matter for the guys eating it too?" And then I was like, "Oh, yeah, tampon. Okay, gotcha." But, uh
Yeah, it does and it does matter if you're like, if you can eat organic, it's definitely gonna be more helpful, but specifically around the reproductive microbes, which I think, like, for the last 5 years has been kind of the cutting edge in fertility reproductive medicine, is just how many microbes are actually present in our reproductive systems and are playing a role in whether or not someone is getting pregnant, whether they can stay pregnant. There's so many layers to that. So, if we can mitigate the risk by stopping the use of um, non-organic cotton period products, then we get kind of leaps and bounds ahead in many ways in support of fertility.
Yeah, and I mean, as well, like it's something that is literally in your reproductive system internally. Well, if you're using a tampon, but even a pad, like it's hours on hours in contact with you, and like being absorbed. So that's a really good point. And real quick, I wanted to mention though about the car freshener. So uh, yeah, like in high school, I always had a car freshener. I have pretty much ever since high school, I've done away with them, and I do a new method, which is you have an indoor like cabin air filter for your car, and if you put some essential oil on there, it doesn't last super long, but for a temporary like few days, you can just put a couple drops on there, put it in, and you do not even have to have your air running. You'll still smell a little bit of it, which is like a good yeah, it's a good little workaround. But I've gotten to a point where I'll just say a family member of mine, when I go stay at their house, they love air fresheners. And I go around unplugging them every time I'm there because I have been in the house when the air fresheners were plugged in and was getting this like cranking headache. And I couldn't figure it out. And then I like looked, I saw one plugged in. I was like, I'm gonna just unplug these and see if it changes anything. I swear in like 10 minutes, my headache went away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's isn't that wild? It's like it is likely, very likely that it was the air freshener. And so many people just have them going like plugged into their house everywhere all the time. And I can't, I won't even walk into people's houses anymore because A, I'll get a headache, B, I'll be struggling with allergies, and then C, like that lasts for so many days that it's not worth it for me. I'm like, "Hey, I'm gonna come over. Can you, like, make sure the air fresheners are out for, like, a day before I come over?" That yeah, a little bougie, but, you know.
I'm on the same page with you on that one. I don't think it's bougie. Um, I wanted to ask you as well though, w how common for you at least that you're seeing, is it for people to both men and women to have fertility issues in this day and age? Because I always hear it's on the rise and it's a lot, but is there like an actual number that you're seeing in frequency? Why, hello there. What do we have here? These are the newest meat stick flavors from Lineage Provisions. This is the spicy Southwest style and garlic and onion. And honestly, I've just been going to town on these here recently because I've been looking for a clean, healthy snack. I don't always have time to make a home cooked meal. I need something that's convenient and as well as going to help me hit my nutritional goals, such as getting enough protein in and as well making sure I'm getting enough micronutrients, which Lineage has definitely cracked the code on that because they've been able to provide some 100% grass fed beef as well as 100% grass fed organ meats, such as heart and liver. So we're making sure we're getting enough of those micronutrients that we might be lacking or just not getting enough of in our current modern diets. So if you're looking for something that tastes really good, I personally love the spicy Southwest flavor. And yeah, so if you're looking for something that tastes good, but is also going to hit your nutritional goals, go ahead and check it out in the description. Get yourself a little discount code. I promise you, you're going to love everything from Lineage. Super, super high quality, great stuff. Let's get back to the episode. Peace.
Mm. So, I will say, like, when I started in this field about 15 years ago, it was 1 in 8 couples. It then went to 1 in 6, and I think now we're at 1 in 5. And the couples that they're talking about are couples only between the age of 18 and 35, which are considered our reproductive years. So, as you know, like the number of couples that are waiting till later and later in life to even start trying to have a family is high. It's really high. So, we have this like what's generally considered the reproductive window. That's the general like time period that the CDC and like research is tracking, and it's that 18 to 35 window. And for all the couples that are over 35, I think that number is way higher, but we don't actually know what that number is, right? So I would say it's probably like 1 in 3 uh for couples over 35 that are going to struggle with fertility.
Wow. That's yeah, those are huge numbers. That's no joking matter right there. If so, I mean, obviously, the younger you are, the better chance you have of well, being fertile, essentially. But moving into our later years, let's say post 35, uh, what are some of the things that we can be doing to really take care of our fertility, like our fertility health, and making sure that obviously, there's no guarantee, but giving us the best chance at being fertile at a later stage in our life.
Um, I think there's a lot that we could do, and most of it can actually start or the sooner the better, right? Like if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm 23 and I have no plans of having a baby anytime soon. Cool. Still start. Still listen to this. So we really want to start with what we can start with, and that is going to be get rid of the toxins. That's a really easy one that is going to benefit your health in multiple ways. It's not just fertility. It's like you don't even need to want to have a child to do all of the things that are going to get rid of the environmental toxins. After that, like the food that we put into our bodies really super important, and I'm sure you've talked about this a million times, but kind of a whole foods diet that incorporates a variety, incorporates vegetables. Uh, there's I'm sure you know, like, there's the trend of only eating certain food groups nowadays. I feel like there's so many things that I can say about that, and, like, they're okay for short periods of time for specific healing things, cool, do a diet. But in general, what is most beneficial is eating a variety of foods, eating all the food groups, but trying to get as whole food as you can get, not the processed crap. So that's the number 2 thing. Drinking adequate clean water is really, really important. I think a lot of people forget that. And then sleep and really, like, optimizing the sleep-wake cycles that support our rejuvenating like, the rejuvenation of cells, especially reproductive cells, happens while we sleep. So, if we're not getting adequate sleep in the adequate window, in an optimal way. So, for example, if we are looking at screens late at night, which I am guilty of, looking at screens at late at night, that lowers the production of melatonin naturally in our bodies, then the likelihood that the melatonin that our body needed to support rejuvenation while we sleep is not happening. So even if you got 8 hours of sleep, you didn't actually get the 8 hours of rejuvenation that your body would have had. And the biggest hit is going to be to your fertility, because fertility is the only thing that is not a necessary function of survival. It's the one thing that our body does that has nothing to do with whether or not we exist on this planet. Uh, us as, like, myself, the human, not the human race. Obviously, that is very dependent on fertility. But if we think about it from that aspect, then fertility is the easiest thing to kick off. So if we're stressed, if we don't have adequate energy, if we don't have good mitochondrial function, all of those are going to be really easy things that are going to trigger the let's just turn off fertility. We don't need that. So let's turn it off and divert those resources somewhere else. So the more you can create the foundation for that sleep is going to be supportive to your future fertility. And then I would say the last piece of that, it would be really supporting um, the stress resilience in the body. And I'm saying that carefully because so many people hear me talk and they're like, oh, she's going to tell me to cut out stress. I can't do that. We're all stressed. We're all going to stay stressed. So the only solution for me is, like, how do we adapt our bodies to better handle stress and really choose the stress that we take on, right? So sometimes it's like we're in a season of life where work is going to be stressful, or you're starting a business that's going to be stressful. But if you can look at it as, like, okay, this is the season I'm in, and I'm going to put some things in place that are going to support my body to be more resilient, to not have the negative response that stress would create in my body. Maybe that means I spend more time in nature. Maybe that means um, I take the weekends completely off and, like, shut off the computer and the tablet and all of the things. Maybe that means I take more baths, whatever it is for you, right? Like, you can decide what that looks like, but the goal is to help your body not feel the burden of the excess cortisol, noradrenaline, and adrenaline that's being created from the stress response that you're having on a regular basis. So that's going to be super important. Um, so those are, and then movement, and, like, not forgetting that we need the movement, and we need to support our hormones in a way that is going to be conducive to future fertility. So, like, if we talk about men for a second, the testosterone epidemic that's happening. I'm not sure if you've talked about it on the podcast before, but there is this like growing population of young men that are suddenly like, I don't have any testosterone. I need testosterone shots. And unfortunately, testosterone shots are the best way to kill off all of your sperm. Um, so taking testosterone is not the solution for future fertility. And I've had young men be like, well, I don't care about that. I don't think I ever want kids. And I'm like, yeah, but your wife might. Your future wife that you have not met yet might want kids, and you might be like, actually, yeah, that would be great now. And there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it in retrospect. So no, I will not give you testosterone shots. I'm sorry. You're way too young. And there's no reason for it. Like, what is the reason for your low testosterone? Let's deal with that shit, because that's what's going to make it or break it for your fertility in the future. So testosterone then is really like an indicator light of, hey, something is out of whack. And it's often the high levels of stress, it's the environmental toxins, it's the lack of sleep, the lack of melatonin production, and the lack of movement and exercise. Sitting on your ass all day at a computer is not conducive to making testosterone. You really need to do some squats. So, like, that whole epidemic, quote unquote, that's happening, and like so many men are not having those conversations with their doctors and are not being told, like, yeah, sorry, you're too young for testosterone shots. We need to figure out why your body is not producing this on its own. But most T clinics are not doing that. They don't care. And a lot of the guys that we see have never been warned that it was going to kill their testosterone. It was going to kill their sperm. So they took testosterone for years, didn't know. Then they come to us, why can't I get pregnant? We're like, you don't have very good sperm. And they're like, what do you mean? What? And like, and how long have you been taking those T shots? So it's unfortunate, but that like whole movement is really working against fertility in a big way, and in like kind of a scary way. To me, it's a red flag if the guy was never told, like, hey, by the way, you're in your fertile years, this might actually affect you. It's a different story for men in their 60s. Don't care. Give them all the testosterone. But young men really don't need it. So if we think about like what can we do, it's not doing the things that are going to harm future fertility and making sure that you're aware of it and that you have thought it all the way through, even if you think you never want to have children. Because you don't, the reality is you don't know. If someone asked me in my 20s, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like, do I really want to have kids? Like, who would have thought that I would become a fertility doctor in the future? But when I was young, I definitely, it wasn't even on my radar. So um, it didn't really click in, like I said, till I was married, till I was in my early 30s, and then suddenly something shifted. And that experience is relatively common for women and men, I think, more so men who suddenly get into their 30s, like, oh, I want to settle down. Maybe I do want to have kids, right? So you're not thinking about it when you're young. And it's okay. It's not a judgment. It's just that you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot before you've had the chance. So, yeah, that's my rant.
Huge round of applause. No, 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 no. Huge round of applause to you on that one. I hope everyone who listens to this episode like takes that piece and just puts it into memory, or at least takes a few pieces away from that, because that was incredibly well put, and I couldn't agree more with like every single point you hit there. Yeah, like I I I like to show how, especially in your reproductive years, for if you are a fertile person, you're typically a healthy person, right? Like they a lot of times they go hand in hand. And what's so funny is that by doing the things that would improve your fertility, you're going to just naturally become a healthier person. So it's a win-win situation here. And I remember back in the day I took royal jelly, and I saw that it can make you fertile, or supposedly, right? And I was like, oh, well, I don't know about that. But it's like, no, dude, a healthy body, especially at this age, is a fertile body. Like, it's okay. But yeah, the sleep portion is huge. Cannot hit that one enough. I think it's for every piece of our health, it is so incredibly important, but especially for fertility and the piece on testosterone. Thank you for mentioning that. I've only had one other person say that, and I really think that the alarms need to be rung on that because it's incredibly important. And then a little piece of my bro science here when it comes to fertility is I also and I've heard pieces as well, but like I'm just putting it together with like a no backing on it essentially. But basically, as well, especially when we think about fertility, when we look at a mother who's going to carry a baby for months, 9 months here, uh, if you're leading up to being pregnant in a state of not getting enough nutrition in because maybe you're fasting now, which back in the day would have been you're starving, and like that would everything that you're doing that's showing your body that you're not in a safe enough environment, especially with the stress, like you were mentioning. If you don't feel safe, your body is going to pick that up and understand, hey, this is not the time to be bringing a human into the world, having 9 months of, not me being at my full capability. It just, the body is super smart. And I'm sure there's some science there. I'm adding my own little touch to it, but I think that's really important to recognize. And so that's why I really loved when people started talking about like fasting for women and how to do that in a better method, like with your cycles, for example. Because yeah, you could essentially lose your period from fasting. I've heard like I used to wrestle back in high school, and yeah, like some of the dieting that we would do was not super healthy to get on to your weight. And yeah, it would sometimes lead to people actually missing their period. And yeah, this is just all of this needs to be more spoken about, and it's really cool to have you on here bringing this to light. Like that's like I said, every single point, I couldn't agree with it more. Like my whole body felt that.
Yeah, awesome. Did you listen to my TED Talk?
I've learned. Okay, full disclosure here. I listened to a piece of it. I haven't listened to the full thing yet. I will be listening to it, and we can also link that in the show notes for everybody. Because yes, Dr. Almada here has done a TED talk, which is so awesome.
Like the only reason I brought it up was because you mentioned safety, and there is actually quite a bit of research which when I started doing the talk and I was like, what is the message that I really want to get across? It was this piece around safety and how our body's constantly detecting whether or not it's safe. And if it's not safe, guess what we turn off? Reproduction. If it's not safe to be in our body, reproduction is off, especially for women, but I think that's equally true for men. So then you put us as humans into an environment where environmental toxins are a thing, mold is a growing issue that is essentially like our immune system is under attack very significantly. Then you add in food sensitivities, you add in just like the stress of day to day life, you add in emotional stuff, world stuff, right? Like it's really not a safe time to have a baby. And the body is constantly choosing whether to prioritize safety, which means reproduction, or prioritize not safe, which means survival. And we're not always aware of that decision, right? So we think, oh, I'm doing all the right things. The number of times I meet women that are like, oh, yeah, I intermittent fast. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's, we know what we need to fix, right? Like, you cannot intermittent fast as a woman and give the message to your body that it's safe. Similarly, you cannot go on a carnivore diet as a female and have your body feel that it's safe. You literally are depriving the body of the building blocks for progesterone, which is the key hormone that you need if you're going to have a baby. So, some of these choices that are coming out of what I feel is like the biohacking universe, and some of them are great, and some of them actually are the opposite of what would be great for fertility, right? You even cold plunging, which I'm a huge fan of cold plunging, but if you give it to the wrong person whose nervous system is fried, you're going to actually trigger unsafe response and like move away from fertility. You give it to a person whose nervous system is intact, cool, no problem. They're going to be fine. But that is it's a really like individualized thing, and we take all of these like hacks and like everybody should do this. It's amazing. And well, like I kind of get it. I do. I like sometimes I go to some of these conferences and I'm like, "Oh my god, that was so awesome. Like everyone should have that experience." And then I'm like, "Okay, whoa. Maybe my client that is going through XYZ thing is not the right person to have that experience," right? So, really, like, you need that, like, individualized attention to what's right for you in this time and season of your life, and how do we optimize what's happening right now for you instead of, like, some generalized recommendations about what you should do to be healthy or fertile.
Yeah. So once again, hitting the nail on the head. So first off, I meant to hit a little bit more on stress. I'm so happy you spoke about that, and I think stress is getting more recognition, but then sometimes I feel like it's not, and I think stress is such a key portion of, I mean, many things in life, but it really is such a detrimental thing. And a lot of the times, I think that we function at a level of this kind of like low level stress that we almost don't even recognize it anymore. It becomes almost like a normal. And then, it's like even for example, like social media can be a form of a stressor, like I saw a post. It was like, I'm pretty sure we weren't supposed to see like war and then a recipe and then like children getting kidnapped and then a cat playing a piano all in the span of like a minute. And it's a weird thing, and it definitely stresses the body. And so I think it's so big and important for us to take moments to tap in with ourselves and regulate our nervous system, see how we're feeling, and as well, like I think one of the best pieces of advice you can really give someone, especially when it comes to health, is to like truly just like know thyself, know yourself, know how you work, and be in tune with your body. Like actually pay attention to how you're feeling and recognize when something feels off, because you are a unique person. No one else is like you. And what the cold plunge that worked for this person might not work for the person with 4 kids, a daytime job, and low income. Like it's a very different deal here. And so I think really making sure that, yeah, like you take the practice of understanding and knowing yourself better uh to heart is very important. And I always I trace everything back to food and digestion, because that's where I come from. But I think about with the food that we eat. I used to eat food that would give me so many and bad stomach cramps, like, and like not even long after eating it. Like we're talking within an hour, I could tell when a food didn't sit right. And to me, it was just, well, this is just me. This is how I work. And then you eat healthy and you're like, oh my gosh, like that was so bad for me all these years. And so even just the practice of sitting down with your food and paying attention to actually how it feels when you consume it is a great place to start. And then I think there's, meditation has a lot of benefits, and a lot of other practices. But sorry, that's my rant.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I agree with all of that. I feel like so much wisdom that we hold within our bodies, and our bodies are constantly reflecting it back if we're able to listen. And that's where, like, we're not always listening, right? We always think like, "Oh, no, I have to XYZ," or "I should XYZ," or "This worked for my friend, so it's gonna work for me." But, like, is it actually working for you, or do you just think that it should? And yeah, just, like, absolutely, if we just listened to our bodies and dropped into that wisdom, we would have the information that we need. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough practice because I think as we live in the modern age, more and more our attention and our energy is a commodity, and everyone is fighting for your attention. And so it's now no longer the norm to be standing in line or whatever and not be on your
Mhm.
phone and not be entertained in some way. And so I think that it's become even harder for people to naturally come to sitting with themselves and really recognizing like how they're feeling and what emotions they're going
Mhm.
through or what their body feels like. And yeah, it's just it's a tough time. Everyone is fighting for your attention.
Mhm.
I mean, look at any turn on the TV or your phone, like you'll see it
Right.
immediately. So that's why I'm a huge proponent of meditation
Mhm.
personally, and journaling, and as well. One of my favorite things here recently is sitting on my patio with a cup of coffee, and just like that's how like maybe I don't start my day that way, but like at some point in my morning, I do that for even 5 minutes, and it's the best. Like I love it so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, that's amazing, and you get the benefits of sun on your eyes, which helps support cortisol production in the morning. It's awesome. That's a really great practice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I know, getting all the benefits there. Yeah, getting outside early. Yeah, so actually, sorry, I remembered I wanted to ask you about women and their menstrual cycle. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
could you, sorry for the total switch here, but could
No,
you
no,
break
you're good.
down uh the menstrual cycle and kind of like what the changes in hormones are during the different parts of the cycle?
Mhm.
Um and as well, like, what are some of and you might have already mentioned it, but like, what are some of the reasons for maybe people having missed a period, or maybe even just having like inconsistent periods or periods that last a long period of time and then the next period
Mhm.
only lasts a couple days? Like, what's kind of going on there? So sorry, I give you
Yeah.
a multi-dimensional
Yep.
question there.
Yeah, let's start with the hormones. So that's a great conversation. On average, it's considered that a woman's our menstrual cycle, which is the whole month, is 28 days. It is like could essentially mimic the moon. So theoretically, we have the start of our menstrual cycle, the actual period, which is going to be cycle day 1, and the menses can last like 1 to 7 days, right? Average being 3 to 5, but there's always a window. And during that phase, the first few days of that menstrual cycle is where all of our hormones are at the lowest. And that's a good time, if especially for women that are trying to assess their fertility. That's the time that they want to assess it. You want to measure FSH, LH, estradiol, and AMH on cycle day 3. That's considered the a good baseline where we can catch, like, if there's wonkiness during that point, something is out of whack. So that'll be the first thing. The first hormone to rise is going to be FSH. That's the follicle stimulating hormone. That's the brain telling the ovary, hey, time to make some follicles. And follicles are essentially pre eggs. So they're developing into what will potentially become an egg that can get fertilized. As those follicles grow, they start producing estradiol. And that's the estrogen that's going to signal back to the brain and say, hey, I'm doing what you asked me to do. So if the signal is going back to the brain, then the brain is getting the signal of, okay, we're good. You're doing your job. I've got the feedback that you are doing what I asked you to do. If the if the ovary doesn't do what it asked it to do, meaning estrogen is not going back to the brain, then the brain keeps increasing that signal of FSH, which is not a good thing. That FSH can keep going up and up and up. And when it reaches upwards of 20, we're considered, and if it's repeated in 3 cycles, then you're in menopause. So you don't want that FSH to be higher and higher and higher, right? You want it to stay steady, ideally below 10 on cycle day 3. That's optimal for fertility. So sorry, I'm doing like our natural cycle and then laying in the fertility stuff since we're having that conversation. So estradiol signals back to the brain. The brain at some point will say, wow, that's a flood of estrogen that just came in. Time to shift the signal from FSH, follicle stimulating, to LH, which is luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone is the surge that we need to get the egg that has been decided is like the queen follicle to be ovulated. Sometimes there will be more than one egg that is ovulated, but usually most of the rest of them just dissolve away. So that queen follicle is released. That is the egg that has 24-hour life cycle. And if it gets fertilized, then you're pregnant. And if it doesn't, then you're not pregnant. When that follicle was released, what is left behind in the ovary is called the corpus luteum. That's the shell of that egg. That shell produces progesterone for 2 weeks. So ovulation happened, LH, and then post ovulation is progesterone, is the primary hormone. And the thing that's producing that primary hormone is the shell of the egg, the corpus luteum. When ovulation happens, progesterone is going to be produced by that corpus luteum, and it will, if it's a good, healthy corpus luteum, it will sustain for at least 10, ideally 12 to 14 days. If it's shorter than that, then it means that the corpus luteum was not healthy and the progesterone drops off quickly and your next period kicks in. So women that potentially have these short menstrual cycles where it's 22 days, 24 days, potentially they're not sustaining that level of progesterone that the corpus luteum should produce. They don't have adequate progesterone and they get a period too early. If that happens cycle after cycle, that's usually a sign that the quality of the eggs is really inadequate or poor. And essentially egg quality and corpus luteum health are tied together. They grew together. So if the corpus luteum is healthy, potentially that egg is healthy. And if the corpus luteum is unhealthy, then probably that egg is also unhealthy. So we can get a little bit of an estimate of what's happening with the quality of the egg based on the progesterone that's produced in the luteal phase. So progesterone is the primary hormone. The secondary hormone in our luteal phase is estrogen. Estrogen is needed for the embryo to develop if fertilization happened. So estradiol and estrogen in general is basically the hormone that is important to make cells, to make things grow in our body, right? That's the goal of estrogen. It's like, it's going to help all types of things grow. So babies included. So if there was pregnancy, then estrogen is going to be crucial to help support the development of that early embryo. If where things get wonky is when estrogen in the second half of the cycle is more dominant or more prevalent than the progesterone. So either the progesterone is too low in and of itself, or either the progesterone is fine, but there's so much estrogen. And that can lead to essentially the flip signal. So if progesterone is not dominant, then the body says, oh, not a time for pregnancy to happen. So that almost always, even if the egg and sperm met and the sperm fertilized the egg, pregnancy still will not happen because progesterone is inadequate or less than the estrogen. So that's where things get very dicey because not everyone understands that. And if we have estrogen dominance, for example, then it's basically the signal to not reproduce. So we need estrogen, but we need it in like a good zone, like a Goldilocks. If it's too much or too little, it's problematic.
Wow. Okay. That's uh, the best breakdown I've had, the most in depth as well. That was really excellent. Now, I do have a follow up question on that. What do you think of seed cycling?
Seed cycling is really great in a lot of ways. So it can help support a natural hormone pattern. And the way that it supports it is more basic than people actually realize. So none of these, besides flax seeds, none of the seeds are actually like hormonally impacting anything. They just have the nutrients that support the hormones. So pumpkin seeds, for example, are high in zinc, which is essential for testosterone production, believe it or not. Um, but testosterone is a precursor to estrogen. So flax and pumpkin paired together in the follicular phase, which is the recommendation for seed cycling, is really helpful to flax seeds mimic estrogen. If you have too much estrogen, they will bind to the same estrogen receptors and make that estrogen have like a weaker response. And if you have too little estrogen, then it'll be kind of supportive. So flaxseed is really good in that like estrogenic period in the early part of the cycle to support optimal estrogen. And then pumpkin seeds also support estrogen through the testosterone pathway. And actually, women, most of the time, women have a surge. We don't talk about testosterone and fertility, but we should. Testosterone in women surges just before ovulation. So if you get a testosterone surge, a natural, like when your body is doing its natural patterns, it is actually pro procreation, right? Like everything is aligned to make babies happen. Your testosterone goes through the roof. You have a better sex drive than ever right before ovulation. And almost all the women that we work with, they will start with no sex drive most of the time. And when they get to a healthy state, at least for the 3 to 5 days leading up to their ovulation, they're like, oh my God, my sex drive's crazy. I'm like, yes, we did our job because we know that if they have a sex drive, they have adequate testosterone. It's driving their desire for connection and sex, which is going to help procreation. But it's also the precursor to estrogen surging, which causes that luteinizing hormone to release and get the egg out. So it's like when we think about how many hormones have to click into place, but that they're like our human body is designed in a way that's just like perfectly synchronized. It's insane. Like every time I talk about it, I get excited because I'm like, oh my God, like our bodies are just so incredibly designed. Um, when it's doing all of the right things, we don't have to think about it. It's just doing the right things. And That is one of my favorite things that our body does. So, yes, seed cycling, flax and pumpkin, helping support that estrogen and, ovulation and the development of the egg, all of the things. And then, sesame and sunflower in the luteal phase is really helpful for progesterone. It has key nutrients that progesterone needs to be adequate in the luteal phase.
That's so cool. Like I'm kind of geeking out with you on it as well right now because yeah, it's so wild how like we were just saying there's such a small window for getting pregnant, and it would only make sense that our bodies would just like right before be like, "Hey, this is the time. Let's make it so your sex drive increases and all of that." That's really, really cool. And yeah, I've heard about seed cycling multiple times. And well, obviously I haven't tried it because wouldn't really do much for me in that sense. But
It could actually. We do have a male seed cycling, believe it or not.
okay.
Um,
Please elaborate on
but
that.
it's it's way simpler. It's not really cycling, but if you cycle through, pumpkin and sunflower, which are really high, nutrient dense seeds that also support testosterone production. So our, recommendation for men is just cycle through them, like 1 each day and alternate, because it supports testosterone.
Okay, that you made a very good point there, and you did mention, yeah, zinc is it supports testosterone production, so yeah, would make sense to have some zinc going in. I have another random question on estrogen, and this is more of a is this a myth or is this valid? Which is for women who deal with constipation, do they typically have higher levels of estrogen? And the reason I ask that is because I've heard that estrogen can be processed out through your stool. But if you are constipated, that there is a reuptake of the estrogen. Is that a myth or is that valid?
Sort of true, but might be off in the reasoning. So, um, it is true that there's a specific, set of bacteria and a pathway called beta glucuronidation, that helps support the metabolism and excretion of estrogen out of the body through the gut. The key, um the key things that the body needs to do that is the specific microbes that help to get that estrogen out. And of course, fiber will bind estrogen and get it out of the system. So, uh, having good bowel movements is absolutely essential to getting rid of excess estrogen. And if that estrogen keeps floating around, you will reabsorb it and recirculate it. But you don't it's not necessarily that the high estrogen causes the issues with the bowel movements, it's the reverse, right? So it's the digestive issues often are contributing to hormone imbalances for sure. And there are many, many, many layers of gut health that are contributing to whether or not we have healthy balance of hormones, especially estrogen.
That's yeah. Okay, cool. I'm happy to get a confirmation on that. Like more obviously in depth and the reasoning behind it. But yeah, that's I always found that very interesting because I feel like there's been quite a few women that like I've worked with in the past, but also I've just spoken to and that seem to deal with constipation and so when I heard that piece on estrogen, I was like, that's really interesting. Um, yeah, but anyways, okay. I feel like we're probably coming close to our time here on the podcast, but I could chat with you for hours. So I've said this to my last couple of guests. I've been having great conversations, but I would love to maybe bring you back on if you're open to it. I just yeah, I love all the information you shared today.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. Thanks.
Awesome, awesome. Well, what I'll do is I'll just kind of open the floor right now for you to share where everyone can connect with you,
Mhm.
learn more about you, learn about your practice, and yeah. So of course I'll put everything in the show notes in the description, so people can find it very easily. But just quickly from me, thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation on fertility and such a in depth knowledge, but in I felt like such a digestible and like easy to just go with the conversation way. So thank you very much for providing that. That was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That is what I really enjoy doing, is like making all the complexity understandable and like in bite-sized chunks. So absolutely, that's my genius zone. Um, the best way to connect and find info and find me is Instagram at Holistic Fertility Doctor. And then the other good way is our podcast, which is Egg Meat Sperm. We're on YouTube and Spotify and Apple and all of the things. So those are the best ways to get more info and connect and just be in touch. Drop me a DM. I am very accessible on Instagram.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you once again. Truly appreciate it. Yeah, you do some incredible work and I highly encourage everyone to get in touch. You won't be sorry. There's some good information, obviously. And yeah, just truly thank you so much from me and all the listeners. And to everybody, I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you all for tuning in. And we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Thanks for having me, Evan. Peace.